These protesters in Mexico City say cross-border migration is changing their country's capital for the worse.
Karma. Karma is a bitch, ain't it? Let's talk about the protests happening in Mexico City.
Did y'all know they over in Mexico tearing white people's asses up right now?
Hello guys, so today is a very interesting day because never in my life would I think that reverse protests would happen in the world. Of course, if you've been following the news right now, you'd be aware that Mexico is experiencing protests, especially those areas that have been bombarded with tourism. The reason why they're protesting is because they are saying they're experiencing what they refer to as gentrification. And if you are yearning to know the meaning of gentrification, come on board with me because this is the first time I'm hearing gentrification. Mark you, English is not my first language. So, gentrification is a term used to describe a process of urban change where a neighborhood undergoes transformation due to an influx of more affluent residents and investment. Of course, we're in Mexico. These are the US citizens migrating to Mexico, working under nomadship or remote working, and then living in Mexico, renting in there because it's quite cheaper as compared to the US. And the effect is they're making local prices for the local Mexican citizens going up, and so they are protesting against US citizens immigrating to Mexico. That is a lot to unpack, but before we even dive deeper into the topic, let's take a listen.
We have to call them out, and they're probably going to get mad at me, but it's okay. So a group of migrants between 3,500 and 4,500 left Honduras many months ago. They've now landed in Tijuana. So obviously they can't get into America, which was their destination that they were trying to get to, because the border's closed. 0 people got through in May. First time I think that's ever happened. But now they're being housed and sheltered in Tijuana. And the citizens are pissed. They're calling it an invasion. They've almost already come to blows. And they're saying, you're taking the public funding that's there for us, the citizens, because now Mexico has to house, feed, and if they have to Medicaid or if somebody's sick, they have to take care of these people. It would be the humane thing to do. Mexican citizens are surrounding the shelters, calling it an invasion, telling them to get out, telling them to go home. The hypocrisy of that. How do you come all the way over here and then make us or be dependent on us? But Mexicans cross the border all the time in Mexico, and it's supposed to be okay. Yeah, I said it.
These protesters in Mexico City say cross-border migration is changing their country's capital for the worse. Over the last decade, an influx of mostly American so-called digital nomads have moved here to work remotely and also enjoy a cheaper cost of living. Protesters say the newcomers have driven up rents beyond the reach of locals.
Did y'all know they over in Mexico tearing white people's asses up right now? If you don't believe me, you can go look it up. But the Mexicans that are in Mexico are literally coming after people who are claiming to be nomads. You know, all those boomers who have now retired and are looking for a cheaper place to live with their retirement. They decided to go to Mexico and try to gentrify Mexico. And they said, no, sir, no, ma'am. The Mexican people are going through their cities where they've built all these places of shops and restaurants, and they are breaking everything. They are blaming this boomer generation and these digital nomads for the reasons why the price of living is going up. They say that over the last 5 years, just rent alone has gone up 43% because of them. They said that because of them, they are now having to choose between groceries, rent, and electricity. And they didn't waste no time telling them, get the fuck out. They even said they was coming on their beaches telling them that their mariachi bands can't play their music. The nerve. That's a cultural thing that's been going on there forever. Why would you think you get to go to someone else's country and tell them what to do? There was even one of the protesters who was quoted stating, this is how colonialism works, and we're going to put a stop to it before it ever even happens, honey. And they don't look like they're joking around, busting windows straight out, honey.
Let's talk about the protests happening in Mexico City. Locals are telling foreigners to pay taxes, learn Spanish, and respect the culture. And now people are saying, but if Americans said that to immigrants, everyone would be upset. But let's talk about why that comparison doesn't hold up. It is not the same thing at all. When immigrants like me come to the United States, we don't come to the United States just to buy off property and live off passive income. We come to work. We do the jobs nobody wants. We pay taxes whether we have papers or not. We build things. We respect the country. We contribute. Now compare that to what's happening in Mexico. The tourists or digital nomads, people that work remotely to escape high rents in the States, they are not there to integrate into the community. They live in Mexico, but they still work for U.S. companies getting paid U.S. dollars. They're not paying Mexican taxes. They're not part of the Mexican labor force. Overall, they're just not helping the Mexican economy. If anything, they are draining it. And the worst part is they tell us when we come over here to the United States to learn the language. They go over there, they don't learn the language. They treat the place like a fucking trend. And what ends up happening? They buy up all this property, increasing the value of property for people that have been there, living there, making it unaffordable for the locals in the country. And that's why people are protesting. They don't fucking hate foreigners. They hate the fact of what foreigners are doing, gentrifying the whole place. Everything, the rent's gone up, $2,000 and up. Everything being listed on Airbnb now. So don't say it's the same, because when we come over here, we're not fucking welcomed while contributing so much to the country, and we still get blamed for everything. While tourists that go to all these other countries like Mexico and my country of El Salvador, they get all the perks while the locals pay the price.
Mexican citizens protested yesterday against gentrification in Mexico, against Americans, Canadians, anybody who is remote working in Mexico. Thousands protest. There's even video if you search Mexican gentrification protests. They attacked American-looking people in restaurants, broke windows, like violence. They wanted to get at them. And it's because they're making Mexico expensive. And they're getting blamed for making Mexico expensive because they go around saying Mexico's cheap, come here. But by doing so, rents and everything else have gone up in Mexico, making it really hard for the citizens. I keep trying to explain that the economy there is on shaky ground. There is no work. The youth don't have work. And like you see here, eventually they hit a boiling point and they start to protest about it. And that's what's happening in Mexico right now. Super interesting to keep an eye on this. If I see more, I'll let you know.
When I was making the intro, I really thought that it was the same situation what is happening in the US and what is happening in Mexico. I thought that if US is welcoming undocumented migrants who want to process their papers so that they can work legally, then I think Mexico should have reflected the same, in that they should receive visitors and then house them and welcome them as they are being supported back in the United States. That's at least what I thought, until the issue of paying taxes and contributing to the economy came in and about. Don't get me wrong, there are good sides of gentrification, which is obviously like there's the issue of improved infrastructure, increased property values, more business opportunities, and reduced crime in some cases. Of course, touristic areas is going to attract law enforcers to be in there in order to make international citizens to be safe, and locals can benefit from that. There are very many parts of Mexico that are not safe, but those parts that are touristic are always safer for locals. Despite all this, there are always downsides to gentrification, of which I'm gonna also read it out, which is the displacement of long-time residents, loss of cultural identity, there's a rising cost of living, and there's also social tension and inequality, which to many debaters who have discussed this thing, I'm just gonna say that it's very true. Especially it's painful if you don't have a home but you've been renting a place there, and then all of a sudden your landlord now says tenants have to buy property. You've seen like averaging 2000 USD. Where is a Mexican local going to get 2000 USD a month to pay for that? And also there are no jobs that are paying in dollars. Like people have to work their air off in order to afford that, but there are people who are coming in working for American companies and being paid in dollars, who can just afford that in like a day or two. If you see people are living large, of course restaurants and hotels are gonna make the prices go up.
Okay, make this make sense. In the town that I spend time in Mexico, Mexican immigration set up a little thing outside of town, and they were checking everyone who came through's residency cards, whether you had a passport, permanent residency, temporary residency, basically like what legal document you had to be legally in Mexico, right? And there was a post on the Facebook group about it, like, have your cards, have your passports, which is the law in Mexico. Mexico has a law that says you have to be able to produce your documentation when asked by authorities. So if you're traveling, that's your passport. A copy of your passport is always like really good to have, but you're supposed to have it like close to you, right? When you're in Mexico. So Mexican immigration is set up at town asking for these documents. And this one guy is like, so this means that we have to have our passports on us 100% of the time. I don't think I can comply with that. I would surely lose it within the first week. And I go to this man's profile, right? And he has all these posts, close the border. And then you get to one that says, Saudi Arabia kills hundreds of asylum seekers at their border. And you click on the article and it's like, Saudi Arabia has massacred hundreds, if not thousands, of asylum seekers at their border. Illegally, horribly, right? And he captions it, Saudi Arabia doesn't have open borders. This is a US citizen in Mexico complaining that he has to follow Mexican law and have his passport on him, while also talking about how we have to close our borders, should basically shoot asylum seekers, and I'm sure is of the mindset, like, well, you have to carry your green card on you, and if you don't have documentation, out of the country. And then I go to like his other posts in this group, and there's a post where he's like, well, I'm trying to get the Mexican senior citizen discount card. I forget exactly what it's called. It's like INA something. And it gives you a discount on some of your like services like water and with some merchants, right? Senior citizen discount card. And his post is like, well, I went down to the delegation to try to get my senior citizen card, and she informed me that you have to have residency. Is this true? And it's like, okay, so you're trying to get a senior citizen discount card of a country you're not a resident of, that you're not paying taxes in, and you're complaining about these people in our country who are taking from the system and coming illegally, yet you own a house in Mexico and don't have residency and want your senior citizen discount card and don't want to have to carry your passport. That right there is white supremacy. It's just white supremacy. Mexico should bow to me. They should make it easy for me to be here because I'm great and I put money into the economy. But I'm going to make it really hard for a Mexican to come to my country, even for a vacation, let alone to stay and work. Like, do you know how hard it is to get a visa to the US to vacation for a Mexican? It is not easy. We make it so hard. And then we go to Mexico and we're like, serve me, make it easy for me. Oh, I overstayed my visa, I'll just pay a bribe. Where do I do that? Like, that is white supremacy. That is white supremacy.
Karma. Karma is a bitch, ain't it? Y'all hear what's going on in Mexico right now? It don't get no better. So while liberals in America are saying, Viva la Mexico, and waving the Mexican flags, protesting with illegal immigrants to keep them here, you know what's going on in Mexico right now? The Mexicans are protesting, holding up their signs saying, hey, gringo, get the fuck out of here, SA. Get the fuck out of Mexico, puto. The Mexicans are kicking white liberals out of Mexico, while the ones here are protesting to keep Mexicans here. What the fuck? So the reason for this is liberal Americans fuck America up, fuck their beautiful California up and their fucked up blue cities, and then they dip out, sell their shit, move to Mexico, right, to live cheaper. Yet they get all the high-paying jobs in Mexico, according to the Mexicans. So they move in, everything goes up because of the high traffic of foreign people, and then they go there with their fucking United States American entitlement for the liberals. They go to Rome and do what liberal Americans do. Because they don't know, when you're in Rome, you do as the fucking Romans do. So they go to Mexico with their entitlement, right? And then they work from home, work on their computer, and then they live this lavish lifestyle. Because when you go there with your United States dollar,
you can buy a fucking mansion for pennies on the dollar. So now because of that, everything, all the prices are going up, cost of living is going up. They're over there fucking up Mexico, and the Mexicans have had enough. So they're over here trying to say, Viva la Mexico, Viva la Mexico. And then Mexicans are over there saying, get the fuck out of here, puto. Go back to America. Go fight in America. We don't want you here. Hell yeah. The only thing they need to realize is, here, they'll just talk. But in Mexico, the Mexicans will actually make them disappear. So they're gonna fuck around and find out. So let's get ready for them fucking liberals to march back here in droves, because the Mexicans are kicking their asses out of Mexico. And that's just news for you.
Do you know how obnoxious you have to be to piss off the most hospitable people on the face of planet Earth, right? A los ciudadanos del país de México, right? To the point where they're like, afuera, gringa afuera. Like, we're done, right? We're done. Like, it's so crazy, right? Because I made some content about this a couple of months ago. I told y'all, right? The Mexicans were getting done, right? When folks were going to the restaurant, y pide la carta in Inglés, and like, come on, like, learn Spanish, bro. It's not that hard to learn basic Spanish. And then driving up the rents, acting like you in the 51st state when you're in a completely different country. They had enough, man. They had enough, and I'm there for it. I hope all of these gringos, all of these fools get about 15,000 quiero llorars and get the hell out of there, man. Because again, they have really, really messed up the situation, or tried to mess up the situation, in one of the best countries in the world, which is Mexico. Much love, baby. Estoy aquí en la lucha contigo.
What is the difference between this and this?
The difference is that in one of those photos, there are people defending their land against the greatest colonial empire trying to take it away. While in the other photo, it is the greatest colonial empire engaging in its colonial project. Hence, those two groups are not the same. One of them is a colonizing group, the other is a group resisting neocolonization, which is, in terms of Mexico, gentrification. And you will never, ever find me ever criticizing a resistance group for using violence against their oppressors. The looting, rioting, the destruction of property that you see in Mexico right now against gentrification pales in comparison to the violence inflicted by the gentrification itself to the people in Mexico. Because gentrification is violent. It destroys livelihoods, it destroys families, it destroys lives, it destroys an entire culture and history of a people. It is a great disservice to discuss current events in a vacuum, not recognizing that there are centuries of power dynamics at hand. And more importantly, not recognizing the systemic damage that oppression, imperialism, neocolonialism, gentrification does on a people. By holding resistance movements to standards of nonviolence while not doing the same for their oppressors, it's like you're tying Mexican people's hands behind their back while gentrifiers and the United States is just punching them in the face. By drawing the false equivalence between the United States' inhumane and oppressive immigration policies against specifically Mexicans and Mexicans' resistance against those and against the United States' gentrification of their country and their culture is not only ahistorical, but it's also anti-liberationist. The use of violence by resistance movements against their oppressors is not only justified, it is necessary for their liberation.
Yo, I'm trying to get on board with the last debater here. I want to agree with her opinions, I want to agree with her arguments, but the last statement there, justifying violence, I don't get on board with that. I really don't like violence. As a person who has experienced violence when I was young, I would not say that violence is something that someone can use and can be justified. Yes, they can use and get something, but I cannot justify it. Not never in my life. You can, they can, a lot of people can, but for me, I cannot, because so many people have not experienced that. It makes me come to another thing here. Well, when people are protesting and then they destroy property, of course it's the Mexican people who are protesting and then they are destroying the Mexican property. Of course, I'm assuming it's the hotels or restaurants in Mexico that have raised their prices, but remember, they're Mexican owned. The only people who are consuming products from those amenities or buildings or houses or restaurants or hotels are Americans. So that is where the problem is, because they're raising the prices because they've seen an opportunity. Remember what we've seen there? Gentrification can cause boost in the economy. So it's a two-way traffic. And so if they're destroying property, basically they're just destroying the properties of their own who contribute so much to the economy, because when these restaurants or hotels get this money or revenue, there's tax cuts that comes in and about which the Mexican government receives, and when the Mexican government receives the taxes, they use that in order to provide some services to the citizens or the local citizens in the Mexican country. She really explained it very well. And the thing here is that you cannot go to another country and want to be treated like you are in your previous country that you came from. When you go to a country, you have to respect that. The issue of gentrification is really bad, and you cannot compare how immigrants coming from the US going to Mexico and those coming from Mexico going to the US, because these Mexicans going to the US are going to work hard, manual labor. They are not going to take dollars from Mexico to US. They literally don't have money. They are going to work for that money and then they are going to be taxed. But these US citizens coming to the Mexico, they are not coming to work. Remember, they are tourists, but they are coming in that shell of tourism. They are working, and they are working for American companies, and which is going to take a hit to the Mexican economy because these people are not contributing to taxes. The only tax they are contributing could be like the value addition tax, the VAT, which you pay when you're being offered services. Like when you go to a shop and buy an item, of course there is a VAT on the price that is already inclusive in there. VAT is not main source of revenue collection for any form of government in the world. It's just a by the way, because most of the countries average between 14% to 20% VAT, and so it doesn't make that cut that people want as compared to like income tax or withholding tax, which could range between 25% to around 40% in other countries in the world. You might ask yourself, is gentrification only happening in Mexico? That is not very true, because gentrification has been happening in so many cities in the world. In Italy, we have Milan, we have Rome. Well, in Greece, we have those cities like, is it called Mykonos or something of the sort? Thailand, very much affected. Indonesia, Bali, another one there, because remote workers or nomads, they call themselves digital nomads, have gone to these cities. Just many coastal towns. People with money like dollars, euros, these strong currencies go to these poor countries and then they live lavish life, and then it ends up affecting the locals. What is the local government doing? It seems like the local government is confused and doesn't know how to deal with this, because they're just coming out and making presses condemning the violence. Literally, instead of trying to find a solution, maybe sitting down and having a dialogue and see ways in which they can talk to property owners, restaurant owners, also to see how these tourists can declare if they are coming for the sole purpose of tourism or they are coming in to work. The issue of learning the language is just common courtesy. When you go to a place, try to even learn greetings, try to mingle with residents, show respect, carry your documentation. Do not treat them like they are inferiors and you are superior. These are just one-on-one to travelers. Like if you are traveling to a destination you don't know, these are one-on-one. Do not go there and try to dilute their cultures. They're gonna become upset. And now people are being left to wonder, how is it that the American people or American citizens in America are defending migrants, especially those coming from Mexico, and yet in Mexico they themselves are pissed with the Americans? So I hope this discussion has really opened your mind on that. If you read in between the lines, you might be able to find your answer. Well, guys, I want to hear from you. So don't shy away from sharing your opinion or your thoughts on the subject. Also, don't forget to check the original creators. Their usernames have been embedded in the Stitch videos as always. Go on to their TikToks, follow, like for this channel. Make sure you hit the huge thumbs up button. Consider subscribing to the channel. Turn on post notifications so that you may not miss my next upload. And with that, guys, let me meet you in the next one. Peace out.